JA for Stretford, Paddock. This is it. This is the big one.
I know how you feel, Jay. It's not right, is it? It's not right, all of this.
No, do you know what, Joe? Come on. This is it. This is the big one. Manchester United travelling to Anfield in the Premier League. The most successful Premier League team ever faces the Scousers.
Brilliant.
Yeah?
For now.
Joining me as always is Mr. Joe Smith. This is the preview.
We need to enjoy that while it lasts, you know.
What?
We need to sing 20 times as many times as we can.
I think that's a great point.
Sing it in the shower, sing it at the ground, sing it at work, sing it when you wake up, record it and have it as your alarm tone.
Yeah.
Have it as your ringtone.
Yeah.
Honestly, because
sing
by
it in the library.
we've got about 5 months.
Yeah, in the hospital.
In the hospitals.
Yeah, sing it everywhere.
Sing it wherever you can.
Do you know what I mean?
And just sing it in your goddamn head.
20 times, Man United. Sing it until about mid-April.
Yeah. No, I'm having because they probably win by 15 points, don't they? But there's a lot to be said for being the current most successful team in English League history.
English League history, well said, actually. Yeah. Not just Premier League history. No. In fact, we can still have Premier League history for a lot longer.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So
because they've only got,
we've got 13.
So we'll have, until City or someone
City will catch us there. Maybe even Chelsea, by the way, they're playing these days.
So let's just milk it for all it's worth. Listen, we know it's going to be difficult.
Speaking of getting milked.
Yes. We know it's going to be difficult at Anfield. Yeah. Liverpool are a bit good. United are probably the worst I've ever seen Manchester United be in my lifetime.
That's a good point.
Is this just a question of restoring a bit of pride with the performance? Even if we don't get the result we want, even if we don't win or draw, even if we lose, is it a case of just putting up a fight and putting in a game where you go, do you know what? All right, we didn't win or whatever, but we went toe-to-toe with them. We made them work for their victory. I know it sounds proper sort of two-bit, but it's where we are, aren't we? Is that what you want to see?
I do, yeah. And because when Amarim first came in, the results haven't all been great, and we've struggled in the league in particular. But we at least were putting in understandable performances.
Yeah.
Like against Ipswich, we let them have a few chances, but we looked quite good. I thought even against Bournemouth, we actually looked quite good despite losing 3-0. I know that sounds bizarre, but when you compare the Bournemouth performance to the Newcastle performance, they're literally night and day in terms of the Newcastle one was technically a closer game. The scoreline was closer, but we were horrific in that first half against Newcastle. We need to look like a proper team again at some point. Like the thing that will, endear people to Amarim, not just us as fans, but the players in particular, which is really what counts. The thing that will endear them to him is thinking that his system works and that it makes sense and that there's a reason to buy into it. If you watch that Newcastle game, there was no reason to think, and I'm not saying we shouldn't think it, but if you were just using that as a one-off, there's no reason to think what he was telling them was helping them at all.
No.
They were hideous. They looked completely like the manager had told them to go out there, and if you go out there and hate every minute of it. And they went, yes, boss. We need to see something of a team, and I don't expect us to win the game. And I think, it could easily be a drubbing. But like if you said, if we can keep it close, obviously, if we can get a draw or get a win, then amazing. But look like a real team fighting against another real team. That Newcastle performance was so worrying. Let's just start with a bit of pride and looking like Man United. What do you think?
No, I agree with what you're saying, and I hate to have to say it. I'd love to sit here and go, you know what, we should take the game to them, we should win. There's no reason why we can't beat Liverpool, but you have to be realistic. You've got one team that's absolutely flying, that's looking good defensively, they're winning the battles in midfield, in attack, Mo Salah's on fire, and then they've got other players that are weighing in with goals, like Cody Gakpo and Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez have all scored goals recently. Against a team that is the complete opposite. We're conceding goals, we're conceding silly goals. The midfield's all over the place, and we don't look like we could buy a goal. No. It's horrible. I just want to talk about the midfield.
We've scored 21 goals in 19 games.
That's pathetic.
Absolutely pathetic.
Honestly,
pathetic.
It amazes me how we can keep getting more depressing as a team with these stats.
Under Ten Hag, we didn't score enough goals. Yeah. We've been speaking about it on the channel for 18 months now, that even after Ten Hag's first season, decent, we scored 58 league goals that season. We've scored 21 after halfway point this year. That's 42 goals if we do the same next time. which is almost 20 fewer than we did under an underscoring Ten Hag, that cannot continue at all, can it? That's that's absolutely absurd.
And we don't. I know we've like the XG and things like that hasn't been too bad when you talk about the Bournemouth game going. If you just forget the Newcastle game for a second, but we don't look like scoring.
No,
we don't really. We had a couple of chances against Newcastle, and I think we shot wide. We just look like a team that's low on confidence and doesn't have the strikers or the attackers to take the few chances we do get, and we aren't creating enough. Yep. So it's just like the worst sort of perfect storm, if that makes any sense. I want to talk about the midfield, because you mentioned there about the midfield against Newcastle, and I actually thought against Newcastle, listen, I love Ruben Amorim. I think he's the right man for the job. I'm not at all saying, questioning his tenure or whatever, but I thought he was very naive against Newcastle to trust Eriksen and Casemiro. I know we had no Ugarte and we had no Bruno Fernandes, but I thought we looked much better when Kobbie Mainoo came on. And it wasn't saying much because we were awful, but in midfield at least, Kobbie Mainoo seemed to provide a little bit more of what we needed. And it's sort of, the game was already lost, but it was more acceptable once Mainoo was there. I mean, this match is a lot easier not a lot easier, but at least this match he's got his first choice midfield back options, because he's got Ugarte, he's got Bruno Fernandes available as well. How important could the midfield battle be in terms of this game, and what do you think we need to see? Because obviously, the trouble you've got with Liverpool, I did a bit of a preview for the Anfield Wrap the other day, and I was talking to them and I was like, I realised that yes, they have got Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk, who for me are world-class players, but they've also got other players who, because of the way they play at the minute, are full of confidence, doing well, who are a danger. And you think, you look at, is it Ryan Gravenberch who's playing really well? Yeah,
Gravenberch is smashing it.
He's smashing it.
Szoboszlai, you've got McAllister in there as well, and then you've got Curtis Jones as well, who's playing well. They're in a mode where everyone's playing great. You look at Man United at the minute, by contrast, every single person that me and you were about to pick for our starting 11, except maybe for Ahmad and Mazraoui, if someone wanted to sell that person, no one's going to put up a big fight. Everyone's like, they're terrible, they're on the chopping block, they're awful. Even the players we think we love, like Mainoo and Bruno, are getting a load of stick at the minute. Some of it though, I have to say, especially on the Mainoo, and you're right, some of the Mainoo stick, I've got to call this out, I'm sorry, I have to, because I'm just not having it. I don't understand where it's coming from. I don't understand the mentality. I'm saying, yes, you can criticise him, and I don't think he's been as good this season as he was last season, but he's still a kid, and some of the blame he's getting, for me, it's just insane. I'm sorry, it is, and it's a big Marcus Rashford-shaped hole there for people to sort of vent their frustrations out, even though Marcus is still getting a lot. And it's like, right, let's blame Kobbie Mainoo for the faults of this team. By rights, a 19-year-old midfielder probably doesn't even start every week for Manchester United, and probably isn't a player that you're looking at to help get you out of a mess. And that's what he's been doing. And I thought he did a very good job of it against Newcastle, coming on 2-0 down in the first half. It was good.
It couldn't be much worse for a player coming into a game where Newcastle are flying. And it just really annoys me that he's getting some stick. Bruno Fernandes, you mentioned as well. I understand frustrations a little bit more with him because he's experienced. We know how good he can be. He's the captain, and he hasn't been at the levels this season as we've seen in previous seasons. So I get it. It's just some of the criticism at times is insane.
And it's not that all the criticism is completely justified, but you could say, I want to sell Martinez, Onana, Bruno and Mainoo, and a decent chunk of people would go, fair enough.
I hear that.
Whereas by contrast, Liverpool, it's like even their players who aren't deep down top players look like top players at the minute, because they're playing with that like Adnan Januzaj in his first 6 games kind of confidence. Do you know what I mean? It's like maybe overall they're probably not good enough, but at the minute you'd never know it because they're playing to the absolute peak of their abilities, and that's why they're so hard to beat, because everyone is just firing perfectly. The runs off the ball, the movement. We'll get into the opposition in a little bit, but United, our midfield versus their midfield is really worrying because they've got a team full of, I think, midfield-wise, 7 to 7.5 out of 10s, but they're playing like 9 out of 10s at the minute because they are just completely just purring away in terms of like their confidence, their form, everything is just 10 out of 10 for them. So we've seen the best and most difficult to beat version of what are even their weaker players. They all look phenomenal at the minute.
No, I agree, and I've not watched lots of Liverpool this season. Why would I? It's just depressing.
It is depressing.
But when I've seen them, it's even like things like when they concede a goal, don't bother them. It's like, we've conceded, right, we'll just go and score another one. And that's the attitude they've got, and that's the ability, because the form they're in, the players they've got, where they can do that. It reminds me of United of old under Fergie, where it'd be like, teams would score a goal against us and it'd annoy us. And you think, we shouldn't have done that. and then we'd go out and we'd batter them.
Yeah.
And Liverpool, at times, even when they've not been amazing, they've still got results.
Yeah.
Not every game they've won this season have they been unbelievable.
No, well, they'll be winning games 3 or 4-1 when they've not even played well.
No.
Because eventually they just grind you down, and eventually Salah gets in the right area and he either squares it or scores himself. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Let's talk about predicted 11s then, because I don't envy Ruben Amorim, to be honest with you, picking a team to try and get a result at Anfield, but it's what he's paid to do. Joe, start with you. Give us your predicted 11. This is the team you think Ruben Amorim will choose for the trip to Anfield.
Yeah, Onana starts. I think he just does. The back three, I've gone with Martinez, De Ligt, Maguire and De Ligt.
Okay.
I think that's our best back three at the moment.
Yeah.
Mazraoui I've put at left wing back.
Okay.
Again, I'm really struggling with Dalot at the minute. I think he's not had a good game in. I don't think since Ten Hag sacked has he had a good game. I think he's looked all right at times and he's looked terrible at times. But the last time he went, Dalot was really good today. I can't remember the last time I thought that.
I think he's having one this season.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I genuinely think he's having one. And I like Dalot, but what are we in now? 18, 19 games in. Yeah. And like you said, when's the last good game he had? And some of them have been stinkers.
And everyone else, like Maguire's had some good games this season. Martinez has dropped off to a certain extent, but he has had good games this season. De Ligt the same, Mazraoui the same, and Ahmad, who I think should play at right wing back, has had plenty of good games. Dalot hasn't really had any good games. Certainly not for a couple of months at least. So I've put Ahmad back into wing back. I just think he offers so much more. He has a bit more space to do his thing there. He's the only one that can actually attack as a wing back. Everyone else sort of plays like a full back, trying to think what to do as a wing back, and it's not very sort of fluid when we attack with Dalot and Mazraoui as our wing backs. Then in the middle I've gone Ugarte and Casemiro. Ugarte's crucial. He's the legs. He's the one who's stopping them having time in the middle. We saw with Eriksen and Casemiro, we couldn't close the opposition down. No. Newcastle not only are Guimaraes, Tonali and Joelinton mobile, athletic, hard-working players anyway, we sort of exaggerated all of those qualities by never being anywhere near them. At least with Ugarte, he's going to be kicking at Szoboszlai's ankles or Gravenberch's ankles or whatever, making them have to speed things up, and that's where Casemiro can use his positioning and his sort of intelligence to cut things out and win the ball back. Between them, I think that works. You can only, I don't think Casemiro works with anyone except Ugarte. But I think with Ugarte in there, that can work. Then I've got Bruno and Mainu as the number 10s. I think Mainu deserves a start after the other day, and he's good against Liverpool. He has been every time we've played against him. And then Højlund up front. Again, I feel for Joshua Zirkzee, and what happened the other week or the last game was pretty shocking, really. But I don't think he's right to start in terms of form or probably confidence. And Højlund's not doing much better on these things either, but he is at least getting a few goals this season, so it's got to be Højlund up front for me. Yeah,
that all makes sense. Just before I get into my predicted 11, get your phones out. Film yourself in landscape like that for 30 seconds and give us your predicted scores. I want your score predictions. Send them to us at paddockmatchday@gmail.com, and we'll use that as a part of our pre-match build-up on the watch-along, so you'll be part of the channel. So send us those score predictions. I understand completely what you're saying. Yeah. I think there's an area of, almost damage limitation before this is started, isn't it? It's like, how can we keep it almost respectable, and which players are doing okay and which players can fulfil that role defensively. In particular, I understand why you brought in Casemiro. I was really, really disappointed with Casemiro and Eriksen in that Newcastle game. I thought that, and I like both these players, and obviously the focal point became Joshua Zirkzee and how bad he was, and the soap opera that came with him getting booed, which we've already spoken about extensively, which I think was a nonsense. But I thought Casemiro and Eriksen at times just the energy wasn't there and the effort. And there was one point where Diallo, I think he headed the ball came off him, and he chased after it, and he sort of ran to the ball, and it was right near both of them, and he got there first, and they were just sort of stood looking at it. They're just on the back foot. Yeah, and I just thought we need to see a bit more from him. But I understand that Casemiro can offer you that. Mine's slightly different. Onana, who is also an issue now as well. He's a massive issue, but we're not going to play Bayern Day, so let's not be silly about it. I've gone with back three. I get your point about Maguire. The manager has spoken about Maguire, praised Maguire this week, and also said he's looking to sign a new deal. But I still think he might go with Martinez, De Ligt and Mazraoui. I feel like he might do for this one. Malacia.
I just noticed you got Malacia starting against Salah.
I just think that if you're talking about Delo, or I know you've got Mazraoui at left wing back.
That way, yeah.
I actually think Mazraoui and Malacia between them might be okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So you've got Malacia playing left wing back up against Mo Salah. Does that not worry you?
It does a little bit, and I think that Martinez has got to help him out. Yeah. But we said this, was it against Arsenal when we started Malacia?
Yeah.
And it was like, you can't start Malacia against Arsenal. Was it Saka? You can't do that. And he actually did relatively well for that first 45 minutes. Yeah. And also, you've spoken about, if Delo started at left wing back, would that solve the problems?
No.
I'm not sure it would.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe the manager's looking at it and going, of all the options I've got, they're all slightly flawed. Mazraoui, Anthony Gordon was causing him all sorts of problems the other night. Like, at the minute, I'm looking at it and I'm just going, okay, who's the manager going to go with? Who's he going to trust? Maybe he looks at the Arsenal game. Maybe he looks at the fact Malacia is a defensive player, is a defending wing-back, if you will, and just think, I'm better off with him. But there isn't an easy option here.
No,
it's whoever you pick, and whoever is at left centre-back has to help out. In the middle, I've got De Ligt, and then I've got Mazraoui at right centre-back. I've got Delo at right wing-back. I agree with everything you said, but I still think he'll play. He does. In midfield, I've got Manuel Ugarte and Kobbie Mainoo. I understand your point about Casemiro. I just think Mainoo looked so much better when he came on, I think, than some of his peers, that he might get the nod for this game. In the 10s, I've got Bruno and Ahmad, and I've got Rasmus Højlund up front. I mean,
I don't hate it. Mostly, I sort of work backwards from wanting Ahmad at wing back and Dalot not to start. And that's how I came up with mine. Obviously, yours is a little bit more what we've seen. But either way, they're quite similar, aren't they? Most.
Do you know when you look at the team and when we're sort of discussing who's playing where and whether he's going to be at wing back and who's going to be up front and who's going to be in the 10, you realise how many players are out of form.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How many players are actually nowhere near. Even players that we like and have been doing well. Mazraoui, I mentioned, he looked a little bit goose the other day. I'm hoping he's recovered.
Had a bit longer off, haven't they, this week?
Yeah. Diallo is not quite at the levels he was a few weeks ago, and I think part of the reason he's suffering is teams have gotten onto it. It's like, stop Amad Diallo and you stop United's attack.
Wolves were just completely surrounded him, and so did Newcastle.
Yeah. And there's no other options. And Højlund looks like he's suffering from a lack of confidence and a lack of service, and that's a terrible combination to have for any attacker. Let's talk about the Scousers briefly. I mean, they're all right, aren't they?
17 goals and 13 assists in 18 games for Salah.
I was hoping you were going to say 17 goals all season for the team.
That's just crazy. That's absolutely crazy. The maddest thing about it is, not the maddest thing, obviously the maddest thing is just the numbers. Like, that, it's great. But he plays every game. Yeah. And he does it every game. Yeah. They don't rest him, they don't rotate him. Sometimes they'll take him off after 75 minutes, but usually they don't. Mostly he's just playing all the minutes, getting all the goals, all the assists. Like, it would be almost worry. Look, they've scored 45 goals this season, and he's been directly responsible for 30 of them, which for most teams would be a worry. But for them, it's just like, yeah, great, perfect, because he will play every game. I know he had a bit of an injury last season going into the AFCON and didn't really sort of push on afterwards. But typically, in the 7 years he's been there, he's had a couple of ankle injuries or whatever it was, and that's it. Like, he plays all the time. So I would expect him to play every game between now and the end of the season and put up maybe sort of record-breaking numbers. He's on for 60 goals and assists this season, and I think the current record is something like 42. Or 44. He's just astonishing. And the fact that he's lost a bit of pace doesn't seem to affect him at all. Liverpool attack with so much more aggression than they have done in the last couple of years. They keep the ball better than they used to. And their runs off the ball, and we talk about it all the time, I'm sick of saying it, but when people get the ball, someone runs off them, and then they pass the ball to that person, and then they make a run off the ball, and then they get it back. Like, we don't make runs off the ball, and when we do, we don't pass it because we're too scared to give it away. Like, the fluidity of their attack is astonishing, and another level even on top of what Newcastle provided the other game. I
think you're right. I think this season has exposed what a fraud Klopp was.
Yeah,
I think it really has.
No, I completely
because
agree. I'm glad you mentioned this.
He fell out with Salah last year, didn't he? Do you remember? They had that row when he wasn't Salah. Everyone was, sell him to Saudi, he's rubbish. No, he's not. He's just got a manager who can't get the best out of him, and who didn't realise how good he was.
He's got a bad manager.
Look at old Klopp, great tactically. Is he? How many finals did he lose?
Yeah, certainly more than he'd won.
He didn't lose like 6 finals on the spin. Mm-hmm. Great tacticians don't do that.
No.
And now you look at it, Arne Slot's come in, took over basically the same team. They only brought in Chiesa, who's not played for him, and he's got them flying.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing you've got to admit, it's that Jurgen Klopp's the most overrated manager I've ever seen in my life. With all that being said,
Can't argue that.
You can. It's factual. You just cannot argue with
What
facts.
did he win? 1 league title in 9 years there?
It's taken Arne Slot about 6 months to win one.
Yeah.
Pathetic.
Slot's already won one. Hasn't he? He's only been there since August and he's already won one.
He's basically won it.
Yeah.
Like,
Ridiculous.
yeah, it is. So I think that's one thing we can get from this whole debacle of a season is that Jurgen Klopp is vastly overrated. With all that being said then, give us your score predictions.
The best I can muster is a draw. Genuinely, I think we're going to lose, and quite comfortably. I don't see how we stop them scoring. We can't score more than 1 goal unless it's horrendous mistakes from the opposition, which haven't happened from Liverpool all year. So I don't know why they'd start now. I think we'll lose 3-1. Hate to say it. How are we going to... We could score 1 goal because you can. How are we going to score 2 goals? Genuinely.
Should we change the chant? We're one of those teams that see now and again. We often score 6, but we seldom score 10. So we often score 1.
Well, we often score none.
None, and we seldom score 1.
I think we should... we often score none and we seldom score more than that. Is what it should be.
All right, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Right, we'll get that going. I agree with everything you said.
I'm sorry to say it, and I think this is the second time in a row I predicted us to lose. I predicted us to lose to Newcastle. I predicted us to lose this one, and I very rarely do it. But what can I do? What
you know what?
Can I pretend?
Look at you. Sat here doing a preview for the Scousers, and you're saying you want them to win. You are a disgrace.
That's what a prediction is. Go on, Jay, what are you thinking?
I think we'll beat them.
No, you don't.
I don't, but I'm not sitting here.
What do you actually think? But pretend it's not what you think. If you're doing an impression of Jay Motti, what would he say?
If I was to do a tweet,
I'd
have a picture of the 7-0 with United saying, "Hold my beer." It'd be one of those.
What, we could do 8-0?
Yeah.
Someone does need to hold your beer, I think.
That's what it'd be. But I don't think we're going to lose 8-0. I actually think we'll lose, but it won't be that drastic. I think it'll be something like 1-0.
Okay.
And then people go, actually, it wasn't that bad.
I'm not going to say I'd take that.
Yeah.
But that is, if we sort of run the simulations on this game 1,000 times, 1-0 to Liverpool is one of the better results.
Yeah. It could, I mean, whilst we are terrible and whilst everything's going badly, there's also a slight sort of, almost a psychological thing that can work in your favour at times, where it's like, we're still the biggest rivals.
Yeah.
And a win is a win. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they might get a goal and be like, you know what, 1-0 up. Shut up shop, but this is okay. Do you know what I mean? We're still winning, and especially if United, do create some chances. Because let's not forget, after the 7-0, we drew 0-0, and we had the best chance of the game.
We're good at making chances. We're just also good at missing them.
So I think Liverpool will win. I can't see United victory, unfortunately, but I don't think it'll be as drastic as everyone expects. I'm going for 1-0 to the Scousers. Unfortunately, listen, I'd love to be wrong, and I'd love to sit here and be all deluded and say United are going to win. And I hope some of you have got more confidence than I have, because we need a bit of confidence.
Big watch along as well. Me, Jay, Ronaldo, and Joe McGrath for this one. So make sure you check it out. Yeah, Sunday, an hour before kickoff. We're here, 3 p.m.
Yeah, and you can be part of it as well. Don't forget, so send us your score predictions to paddockmatchday@gmail.com. That's been Joe Smith. Go and check him out on Sloppy Joe's podcast.
Big game.
I'm Jay Motti. You know where to find me. This has been a preview for an easy trip to Anfield. Thanks for watching.